So you mentioned, a lot of, there are so many factors that affect security or privacy. I mean, you have gone in detail and in depth. What I'm curious about is what is Polyverse doing to mitigate or address some of these problems and challenges that we are facing in the IoT space?
So what we're doing is we're working with the embedded partners that we have, and we're doing something really simple. What we're saying is saying, look, today, if every operating system on every cable modem is the same, every device can be taken. If you took 1 million cable modems and you divide that into 5 groups, that means that the person can only attack 1/5 of your deployed cable modems. And the key thing then is there's no change in the operating system, the debugging, etc., works the same way. What's really elegant about that is that now what you can do is you can essentially ramp up the entropy in the number of the differences in the cable modems. But it also means that now the attacker is looking at this saying, well, if I could take 100 cable modems, that isn't worth my while. If I could take 1 million cable modems, then I'm interested. And so this is where we're getting a lot of traction in the embedded space, because what we're saying is look, we can help you think differently about the way in which you can defend your devices. One of the really interesting things is that we have no runtime overhead. So give an example, if you're running Polyverse Linux, Polyverse protected versions of Linux in AWS, 7 or 14% of your overhead is going to security monitoring. Well, with Polyverse, it's implicit in the operating system because we are the operating system. All we've done is change the memory layout and the register layout. And the same applies to the embedded devices, because what you do is you have a small CPU, and we're saying, hey, look, because you have a small CPU and we're running the same but different operating systems on these devices, you need less overhead for checking the device, which means that your security is simpler, but also your security is increased, right? And that's something that we found really powerful and we got a lot of traction with, because when people look at it, they go, that's really simple. And we go, yeah.
Yeah, that is true. And, it's more like they're turning every computer into a unique, machine. It has its own unique DNA footprint. So it's hard for...
Well, to wrap, one of the things I always say to people is I say, look, today, if you're using standard Linux, Red Hat, Ubuntu, etc., they're all great, yeah? The problem is that the attacker is using exactly the same copy as you are. So they have exactly the same system. If you have just one degree of difference from that operating system, you're incredibly well protected. And if you have 2 degrees of difference, you're even more protected. But the key point is you only need to be 1 away from standard, one degree away, and you have a huge level of protection compared to everyone else. And as I say to people is that, the police turn around if you ever get broken in. They say, put a big lock on the door. And you go, why'd you do that? And they say, because the thief will walk down the street and they see the big lock and they go to the house without the big lock. And the reason they do that is because they know that you've invested some money in security. And so our point is that what you really want to do is just show them that you've got a big lock on the door. And what we do is say you're Polyverse protected.